Welcome back to another episode of the Dudes of the Dead podcast. We are getting very deep into our 7th season with the 1980s goodness, and we got 3 episodes left. One more pick from you, one more pick from me, and then we're going to do our top 10 1980s films, correct?
Correct.
Okay, but before we jump in for today, I would like to shout out Calissa Jabs, who is the wife of Aaron Jabs, who does our outro music, made us this amazing Pennywise crochet. So it looks great. We're running out of room to put stuff, but I figured we could cover up the Dawn of the Dead for some Pennywise. So thank you, Calissa. It looks amazing.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, so now jumping into our quick cuts. Do you want to go first today?
I would like to go first.
Okay,
and actually,
curious to see what you got.
I have one that's been on my list for a long time, and I kept looking at it, and I hate to admit that that I judged it by its cover. So this is Only Lovers Left Alive, 2013. A romance fantasy horror, 7.2 IMDb, 86 critics, 75 audience.
That's pretty good.
This is directed by Jim Jarmusch. The cast is outstanding. Tilda Swinton, Tom Hiddleston, Anton Yelchin, and John Hurt. Anton and John are cameos, maybe not cameos, but not full parts. So the summary is artistic, sophisticated, and centuries old. 2 vampires, Tilda and Tom, ponder their ultimate pace in modern society. So it reminded me of The Hunger from 1982, which is really dealing with kind of the malaise that you might feel as a vampire and the weariness of just being so old. And this one really plays on that. Tom Hiddleston plays, this hundreds of year old vampire, but he's a musician. And of course, if I had 200 years to practice, I'd probably be a pretty decent guitar player. And then Tilda Swinton is this very erudite, much more calm in her character than
she has the perfect
Thomas.
Look for a vampire.
Yes, she does.
Yeah.
And anyway, there's lots of good stuff. I really like this one. It is not like balls to the wall horror. This is not a gore fest.
Is it more romance than horror?
Well, I said romance because Only Lovers Left Alive, these 2 vampires have been lovers in the past. They've actually been married at some point in history, but now they're living apart. And Tilda Swinton contacts Tom, and she can sense that because he's actually, I don't want to give too much away, but he's actually in a pretty low state in his life, but it sounds like he's been this way before over time. So she comes to America. She's living in, I don't know where exactly, Middle East somewhere, and comes to America, and then a bunch of stuff happens. So yeah, so it's a slow burn. You don't really see a lot of vampire stuff. There's a few hints, and then there's one scene in particular where you definitely see.
Did you spoil it? Is it very upfront that they're vampires,
Yes.
or do you have to discover that through?
No, it's right in the write-ups, and it's 12 years old. I'm not worried.
Would you recommend it?
I would. I mean, just because of the cast, the director, it's really well made. But like I said, if what you're looking for is like a scare fest or a gore fest or vampire, like underworld movies, that's not what you're getting here.
No.
So go into it knowing that, but it's a very well done movie, and I would recommend it.
I do love how diverse the vampire subgenre is. Like, there's just so many ways you can take it, and so many different angles. Like, even just this season doing the cowboy one was pretty cool. And anyways. Good pick. All right. I'll have to check that one out.
Well, thank you.
All right. So my quick cut is actually a TV series, and that is The Last of Us.
Continuing your trend of cheating.
Yeah. Is that cheating? TV series?
Well, it's not a single movie, is it?
No, but it's a quick cut. I seem to recall you doing a book one time for quick cut. I don't know.
I seem to recall you doing... Anyway, never mind.
And I guess I could also do the video game. This is the TV series, an HBO television premiere in 2023, adapted from the acclaimed video game of the same name. Set 2 decades after a devastating fungal pandemic collapses modern civilization, the story follows Joel Miller, played by Pedro Pascal, a hardened survivor who is tasked with smuggling Ellie Williams, Bella Ramsey, a 14-year-old girl, across a perilous post-apocalyptic United States. Their harrowing journey evolves into a deep surrogate father-daughter bond, exploring themes of survival, loss, and the human condition. This has a 7.8 on Internet Movie Database and a 96% season 1 approval rating and 95% season 2 approval rating. Have you seen The Last of Us?
I have seen the first 3 episodes and then haven't got back to it.
Okay. Did you like it?
I did.
Okay.
I think I saw it up to the part they hadn't divulged what was happening.
Right.
Just you got a sense of, post-apocalypse kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think in the realm of video games, for those who are video gamers or not, The Last of Us is considered one of the best video games, both in terms of like how cinematic it feels and how good the story and characters are. And the fact that they've almost like shot for shot translated the game into a series and it's getting 95
that's
and 96% on Rotten Tomatoes, I think speaks to how good the game is. Like it is moving. The performances are good. And I think this is probably one of the best video game to like film or TV series that they've done. So if you've not checked out The Last of Us, the second season's really good. I like the first game better. It's based on The Last of Us 1 and The Last of Us 2 is like series 1 and series 2. But it's really good. Pedro Pascal is awesome. Bella Ramsey is awesome. And if you're into zombie-esque post-apocalyptic horror, then you could do a lot worse than The Last of Us. So yeah,
I liked it, but as I've said many times, I struggle with serial television or anything because it just means I have to give up that much time when in my head, I'm thinking I could have watched 4 movies or I could have watched 5 movies.
Yeah, that's true.
So I struggle with that a little bit.
But if you look like Haunting at Hell House or Midnight Mass or The Last of Us, there's so many really good horror series. So if you're not making those part of your repertoire, I think there's a lot of good stuff to have there. So Last of Us Season 2, and a lot of it was filmed in Nanaimo, which is our hometown.
Yes, I remember the street being closed down, the main street in
so we just
downtown.
got to the 3rd episode of Season 2, and you can tell like it looks like Vancouver Island. So I'm excited to see
Nice.
our
That's cool.
hometown on a show. So anyways, that's my quick cut, The Last of Us Season 2 in this case.
Well done.
All right. So moving on.
Indeed. Let's do our feature presentation.
All right. All right, so our feature presentation for today is Hellraiser.
Hellraiser.
This is based on Clive Barker's novella, The Hellbound Heart, who follows Frank Cotton, a man who obtains a mysterious puzzle box that opens a gateway to another dimension, summoning the Cenobites, sadomasochistic beings who explore extremes of pain and pleasure. After being torn apart by them, Frank is accidentally resurrected with blood is spilled on the floor of his brother's house. His former lover, Julia, helps him regenerate his body by luring men to their deaths. Frank's niece, Kirsty, uncovers the horrifying truth and must stop Frank while bargaining with the Cenobites for her soul. This is starring Ashley Lawrence as Kirsty Cotton, Claire Higgins as Julia Cotton, Sean Chapman as Frank Cotton, and Andrew Robinson as Larry Cotton. But we also have Doug Bradley as Pinhead.
Yes.
This got a 6.9 in Internet Movie Database and has a 71% critic score and a 73% audience score. So very balanced between the critics and the audience. So apparently, Clive Barker was very much inspired by BDSM, his fascination with that as an inspiration for this. So as someone who's really into BDSM, I was curious to hear your opinion on Hellraiser. So I'm going to catch you off guard.
How do I recover from that one? Okay. I am going to...
No, in all seriousness. So did you watch this in the 80s?
Yes.
Okay. So I'd be curious to hear what your original... reaction was to this in the 80s.
Okay, I'm going to go off script a little bit.
Sure.
Because I read The Hellbound Heart.
Oh, interesting.
So I was reading Clive Barker. I came across him through Stephen King. He's not as favorite an author for me as Stephen King. I haven't read as much of his oeuvre. But I was reading, he's got 2 collections of short stories, The Books of Blood, number 1 and 2. So this was in there. Clive Barker was and I stand by this, he is the only author that I've had to put a book down because it was viscerally disturbing.
Yeah, I've heard that it crosses some.
He's brutal sometimes. So that led me.
And you're a horror fan.
Yeah.
So that's saying a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I remember, and it's funny because I remember this partly because one of my friends at university was already married and had a child, and being ridiculously naive, I said to him, "Oh, I can look after the baby, so you and your wife can go out." So by myself, I looked after this baby. What he didn't tell me, and what actually we didn't know till later, was that like she screamed the whole time I was there.
That is horrific.
And found out later that she had colic.
He didn't tell you that?
No. Well, I don't think he knew either because she was very, very young.
Okay.
And they were new parents. They were trying to figure out, why is our child always upset? Anyway, so that was horrifying for me. And I was reading Clive Barker while I was babysitting, which is why I remember having to put the book down because I just couldn't. It was so disgusting what I was reading. I couldn't carry on.
Have you ever had to turn a film off because you were so turned off by it? Okay,
But
so
ironically, not a horror film.
Oh, okay.
Well, I mean, I don't think you would. It's the cook, the lover, his thief, and the thief and his wife. And I saw that at a midnight showing when I was in university. And just the colors and the textures of the film actually made me feel a little bit sick.
Interesting.
But I also wanted to shout out Clive Barker because he is a writer-director of Nightbreed, which I don't know if you've seen that movie. He was a writer on Candyman, and he was a writer on Midnight Meat Train. Have you seen that one?
No, I've heard a lot about it, though.
Bradley Cooper and Vince, whatever, ex-footballer from England, the big guy.
Not Vince Vaughn.
No, not Vince Vaughn. This isn't Psycho 2.
No.
Anyway, can't remember his name. Really good. And I just feel like this movie in particular, notwithstanding some sketchy effects from the 80s, I think really holds up as a film just because of the grittiness of some of the characters.
Agreed.
And the lamentation box, or is that what it's called?
How much of the Hellraiser series have you experienced? Because there's a lot of them. I think there's 10 films.
11.
11,
actually.
With the remake?
Yes, with the remake. Okay, well, you know the story of me.
I do. Oh, yeah. I wasn't sure if you wanted to bring this up, but now that you brought it up.
I'm a retired teacher,
epic.
so you're never going to hire me again. So early in my career, I think I was in year 2 maybe. It might have even been year 1. Anyway, I had 2 classes called ungraded classes. And so it was students from like grade 8 to grade 11, all in the same class. And I had history and English that I was teaching them. So I think it was around Halloween. I thought, well, as a treat, we'll watch a movie. So one of the students said, "Oh, can I pick a movie?" And I'm like, "Okay, sure. Go rent one and bring it, tomorrow, whatever."
That was your first mistake.
Hellraiser 2 he brought to this. And do you
think he was testing you?
I don't know.
Or was he genuine like, oh, let's watch Hellraiser 2?
I think he wanted to see it. And I had seen the first one. I'm like, oh man, I should not do this. But I did it. And I stood outside the door so that nobody could come in while they were watching it. I was like, wow, my career could have been over really quickly then.
No angry parent calls to the...
No angry parent calls. There was no fallout at all from that. But anyway, so I've seen those 2. The rest of them, I don't have a lot of interest. The first one is definitely my favorite one.
Yeah, me too.
I say that having only seen 2 of them. But
there was the one from 2 years ago?
I don't know.
Oh, you didn't watch the new Hellraiser? That was on Hulu?
No.
Oh, that was actually quite good.
Yeah. No, I haven't seen any. Just those first 2.
Oh, okay.
I know it's a mixed bag in between there.
Yeah, I've not watched the entire series, but there was that one that came out 2 years ago that got quite good reviews. I think it was Hulu. So you might want to check that one out.
I read somewhere too that the film was already in development before the book was published.
Oh, interesting.
Because he already had in mind.
Yeah, I came across that actually. Yeah. So this is not one I watched in the 80s. I did watch this one maybe like 10-ish years ago.
Okay.
So I agree. I think this one, unlike a lot of the ones we've done this season, does hold up. I actually think this is probably one of the better 80s horror films. And the thing I liked about it is I kind of went in expecting, because you see like Pinhead on the front, and it seems like it's all about the Cenobites. But the Cenobites actually very much take a back seat. And there's a more thoughtful, fleshed out story involving characters that really have nothing to do with the Cenobites. So had this just been like Pinhead and these Cenobites like murdering people, I don't think it maybe would have been as good. But there's a lot more substance in terms of character. It's far more psychological than physical, the horror. And it just seems like there's more going on philosophically that, this is quite enjoyable. And though that might be a problem for some people, if you're wanting to see the Cenobites take front stage or center stage, I should say, they don't do that. But I think it makes the film better, and it's stronger that it stands on its own feet based on the character story. And it's not just another Freddy or Jason or just these creatures massacring people. Yeah,
I mean, I agree 100%. I think they judiciously used the Cenobites, because there's such the Cenobite with the teeth.
Yeah.
Oh, that freaked me out so much when I was first.
Like the practicals are amazing. On
yeah,
the
and I mean, I've watched a few videos on how they did the makeup, and they literally had to put those in like one at a time on his head. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think they said for him it took 6 hours, more than 6 hours to do the makeup.
It's unbelievable.
But he said he felt like, an agent of hell when he was done. And
I bet.
The leather look, the Cenobites look very impressive.
Yeah, they are very cool.
But you would think you would almost be tempted to use them more in the film, given all of that effort into making them look so good. But they're very peripheral to the main story.
Yes, I would agree. Peripheral, but
also very important.
Very important,
sure.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And they've got the best lines in the film. I've got 3 quotes that really stand out for me. But the other thing, before we get too far in, this was originally got an X rating.
I saw that, and he had to take some stuff out.
Yeah, so knowing what's in it, can you imagine what they took out of it?
I almost wonder what they did take out of it.
I would love to see an uncut version of this.
Yeah.
I have a feeling there's probably more graphic sex between Frank and Julia. She's a nasty piece of work, Julia. Whew.
In this. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that. I find these, like at that time period, the mother characters tend to be more peripheral, and it's usually focused on the male.
Yeah.
But I like that it's all based on like her desires and what she wants, and she's very much almost the central character. Like she really drives what's happening, and I didn't expect that the first time I watched it. Like it feels like the film is a bit ahead of its time, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, it is super interesting how they do the, bad boy, good guy kind of thing with the 2 brothers.
Especially, I think, focusing on female desire.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know, for the 80s, that seems a bit ahead of its time, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, although there were still some, I mean, if you consider The Hunger, for example.
I've not seen that, actually.
That has, I'm just trying to remember how far they go. It's definitely a lesbian scene implied if it isn't straight up. I just can't remember how far they take that. So there were a few, but you're right. It's not very common. And particularly because, like I say, Julia is such a nasty character, and it really does focus on her wants and her desires, and also how far she's willing to go to attain those desires, right? And of course, Frank is a nasty character too.
Yes. But I like their introduction to him is kind of through her finding his photographs.
Yes.
And he's not really a character. I mean, he's in the very opening scene, but you don't really get any sense of his character. So they kind of build up his reputation, but before he's really introduced. And I thought the story is like built in a very effective way.
Did you come across the original title?
The
Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave.
Oh no, I thought it was Hellbound Heart.
No, so he wanted to call the original title of the film was Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave.
No, I did not come across that.
And then they changed it to Hellraiser.
That's probably the right choice. Yeah.
I mean, the other one just doesn't trip off the tongue quite
no,
nicely.
it doesn't.
Now, this was, I don't know if it was panned, but it definitely did not get a good critical reception when it first came out. But the critique has morphed over the years, I think, into something more positive. And I think it deserves that. I think time has shown that Clive Barker went out on a limb, did some things that were out of the ordinary for film. And I mean, this isn't a Hollywood film, so we can't really compare it, but he wasn't happy with some other adaptations of his work, which is why he directed this one.
Yeah, because he had two other of his works, right? Made by, he wasn't involved and he was not happy with how that went. Yeah.
I mean, famously, Stephen King, same thing, right? But yeah, I just feel
Stephen King loved The Shining, didn't he?
yeah. Actually, you know, I was just watching this, crazily enough, last night I was watching a Stephen King documentary that I hadn't seen from a couple of years ago. And he does talk about that. And he says, you know, I was really hated Kubrick's version of The Shining. But he said over the years, I have come to terms with how his vision was different than my vision.
So was this a more recent interview with him then?
It was 2021, I think.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So that's neat that he, over time, has kind of changed his thinking, because I can appreciate being frustrated that the film adaptation maybe wasn't what you had intended, but it's hard to deny the craft behind the film version.
It's a, you know, very, very well-made film. But I think he rallied against the idea, like the core of his novel was not the core of the film. So he was like, well, you missed the point of my novel.
Yeah. Fair.
So anyway, so I wanted to ask you about how you felt about, you know, the actress that plays the daughter. This was her first feature film.
Yep.
So what did you think about her performance?
She's fine.
Yeah.
But I don't think when you look at other like kind of final girl leads from the 1980s, like she's not a Laurie Strode or a Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street. Like I thought she was maybe kind of one of the weaker links. Her acting wasn't terrible. I just think she was fine.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I don't think she's terrible, but I also didn't think she was great.
I mean, she
was a bit whiny, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of give her, you know, cut her some slack as her first film.
I didn't realize it was her first film.
Yeah.
So for her first film, yeah, and it's hard to know, like, was it the acting or was it just the way she was written or directed?
Yeah.
But just compared to other leads in horror films from the 1980s, she wouldn't stand out like some others.
No, for sure.
And when I think of what I really liked about the film, it doesn't really involve her.
I mean, did you recognize Andrew Robinson, the dad?
He looked familiar, but I didn't place what else he had been in.
I mean, for a period of my life, Dirty Harry was like my favorite film.
Okay.
And I watched that over and over and over again. And he's the killer. He's the Zodiac in that film. Because although they don't name it, it comes out, the original Dirty Harry film, I think, is 71.
Clint Eastwood?
Clint Eastwood.
Yeah, okay.
And it's really, I mean, yes, it's a sort of a procedural cop film.
Go ahead, make my day. Is that?
Yeah.
Dirty Harry.
Yeah, it's Dirty Harry, yeah. And so Andrew Robinson plays this really whacked out kind of serial killer. And he's very good in that role and so different than this role. He's a very good character actor, I think.
Yeah, when I first started watching, I was like, man, there's like no chemistry between this couple.
No.
But then you realize that's intentional, because at first, like, oh, these two are like really awkward.
Yeah.
And then you realize that she actually has a thing for his brother. So it works. But yeah, at first I wasn't sure if their acting just wasn't very good. But no, they sold the idea that they're not very much a strong couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So where would you like to start with tearing this apart?
Well, it's interesting that you said you didn't feel the practicals held up over time, because I thought the practicals were actually really good.
Only one.
Okay. Is it a spoiler to say which one?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think I'd like to save
that for later.
Yeah.
I know you often, the last couple times, started with music. I really like the soundtrack for this film.
Yeah. It wasn't the typical 80s cheesy synth.
No. I felt like it really added to it and had this just kind of like dark, foreboding, mysterious tone to it. It wasn't like beat you over the head with it. It wasn't as manipulative as some of the like Spielbergian ones we've talked about, but it enhanced it, and I noted it as a positive. Like I liked the soundtrack in this case.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, because I've watched some documentaries and interviews with Clive Barker, I think one of the things that sets him apart and that makes his films kind of gritty is that I think he was involved kind of in the underground sex kind of thing, and also underground music. I seem to recall that I don't think he was in a band, but I think he was connected somehow with underground music. So none of that surprises me then in terms of what comes out in the film.
Yeah.
Because it's very not mainstream.
Yes. And I like the kind of Faustian layer to this, where Frank he's kind of like addicted to pleasure.
Yeah.
So the idea that he kind of wishes for like the maximum extreme of pleasure. And of course, in some ways, if you go to the extreme of that, you end up somewhere probably in the BDSM realm.
Yeah.
But that crosses over into pain. So this idea that the most extreme form of pleasure is actually extreme pain fits really well with like actual, the range of sexual enjoyment for some people, but in the context of horror, like it works really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's kind of like, the Faustian idea where you wish for something, but it ends up kind of backfire. It's not what you intended.
Yeah, and I think
or Wishmaster, where you make a wish for something and you end up getting like the negative iteration of it.
Yes, and there's been quite a few. There was, I think there's a movie called Death Wish, which is kind of cheesy, and this is not the one with Charles Bronson. It's fairly recent. Anyway, in that film, same idea, right? Somebody wishes for something, they have to write it on paper, and then it becomes true. But coming back to something you said earlier about this film being ahead of its time, I think some of those things, like the approach to sexuality that we see in the film, is considering this is 87, so you're in the second half of the decade, and this is, Reaganomics. We had Brian Mulroney was our prime minister. You had Reagan, and then you had
Margaret Thatcher. Yeah.
So it was very conservative times. So putting this movie in context of the time, it is very ahead of its time.
Yeah, like exploring themes of BDSM,
Yes.
and I mean. Rocky Horror Picture Show maybe has a bit.
Sure.
What year is Rocky Horror?
It's 70s, I think.
Right, okay.
I can't remember the exact year, but it's not 80s.
Not 80s.
But
that was the only other thing I could think of in terms of horror that maybe touches on those themes a little bit.
Yes, but what's interesting to me is I've often seen comedies that will kind of cross over into sexuality.
Yeah.
It's rarer that you get a horror film that focuses on the sexual part. There's not always, but there's often teenage sex in horror films and
some of the vampire films.
Yeah, but this one is really playing with that idea of pleasure and pain, and that whole, like you said earlier, that whole BDSM world where, there was no safe word in here though. That's what I noticed.
That's true. And I like how they kind of do it subtly. Like they don't beat you over the head with it, but you can put two and two together that she's looking through the photographs and the Polaroids.
Yeah.
And she didn't come out and say, like I really meant, but like, you just know, like, 100%. Okay, like that's kind of what's fueling her motivation to do what she's doing. And I thought that was like thoughtfully executed.
How did you feel about the, I'm going to scrap that. It's a spoiler.
Yeah, it's tricky. Yeah. I realized even in my introduction that maybe I spoiled things a little bit, but.
What are you going to do?
I guess we could edit it out, but we'll see when we cross that bridge.
I really love the lament configuration.
It's really cool.
It is so cool. And for a long time after I watched this film, I thought that maybe it was real, and I would look for one, trying to find one. Not that I wanted to experience what was in the film. I just thought it was such a cool.
I mean, there's Rubik's cubes.
Yeah, thanks.
Not quite the same.
But that's such a cool object, and that was specifically made for the film. It's a custom box, and it was brass inlay that they did in the box.
I'm sure if you go online, someone must have made a replica that you can get.
Sure now, yes.
That'd be kind of cool, actually.
When I was,
you could put it right here.
That's right. I should look for a lament configuration. I can't imagine. They're probably really expensive.
Someone talked about the idea that if like this film is like a metaphor of like hell is like a prison, then the Cenobites are the prison guards, and the lament configuration is the key to the prison.
Oh, interesting.
So I'm like, that's kind of interesting when you put it together that way. And the Cenobites play a really interesting role. Like you're not they seem to operate under certain rules.
Yes.
And they're not just like out to just hunt and kill people without some kind of
it's not
law or rules that govern what they can do.
Yeah, it's not random. And I think it's an accurate way you described it, was that Faustian bargain.
Mm-hmm.
And they do, so their rules kind of start when you have indicated what you want by opening the lament configuration, because that's their cue, right? That, okay, well, here's somebody who's obviously spent a lot of time and trouble to seek this out, and they figured out the box, and now it's our turn to...
Was it Morocco?
I think Morocco, yes.
So it kind of reminded me of The Exorcist a little bit, where you have this foreign object that comes from usually somewhere like the Middle East.
Yeah. Was it Iraq in that one?
I think it was Iraq. Yeah. And they bring it back. So it kind of familiar to that.
Yeah.
Which I think works pretty well, actually.
Yeah. I think just the, you don't get to see very much. Again, he's very sparing. You're basically seeing two men at a table, in Morocco or wherever. But you can sense the grittiness and the dust. And when they focus in on their hands, you can see how dirty their hands are and all the dirt under their fingernails and stuff. And I think to me, it's fascinating, those little things. You don't have to reveal everything. You can just show a tiny sliver and we get it.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. I think this film respects the audience.
Yeah.
And it's very rich. Like you have her motivations, you have the relationship between her and him, and you have the relationship between the father and the daughter. Then you have the lore of the Cenobites and the lament configuration, and then the way it's all woven together. I do think it's great. It's just it's executed very well.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, and it's
refreshing compared to other 80s horror.
This is accurate, but do you think maybe Clive Barker being director, and because he's an author and a writer, that he knew, okay, I don't need to show all of this, because as a novelist or short story writer, you have to be careful. You can't include everything you want to include. So I was thinking, I wonder if the fact that he's a writer allowed him to make a better film.
I 100% agree with that, because I could see some Hollywood producers getting their hands on, like, all right, let's like double down on these Cenobites. We'll Pinhead, and he'll come out and he'll like massacre everybody. And whereas he's very thoughtfully sticking to his vision. I imagine the written version. Have you read the story?
I have, but it was 40 years ago.
Like having the restraint to focus it on the character dynamics and not just rely on the Cenobites.
Yeah.
Where I could see many directors or many producers, if they didn't have the proper respect for the source material, just...
It's a fine balance.
Trying to make money. And so to me, like when I watched this, I was just really pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, me too.
How sophisticated it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shall we go into spoilers?
Probably, yeah. I think you and I are both dancing around some things because we don't want to spoil it. So at this point, so do you recommend Hellraiser then?
I do recommend 100%. You should see Hellraiser.
Yeah, me too. I said earlier, I do think it's been interesting going back and watching a lot of these 80s films and feeling like a lot of them maybe don't hold up super well if you don't have nostalgia to fuel your love of it. But I think this one is one that does hold up very well. And I would say it's probably, I don't know if it'd be one of my favorite, but I think it is one of the best 1980s horror films in terms of like craft and sophistication.
Yeah, it's a strong film. And like you say, it holds up. I mean, for a film to still grab you after this amount of time, and for a modern viewer not to look and say, ooh, that's pretty cheesy.
So would you be tempted to watch all the Hellraiser films?
No.
Okay.
No, because I know some of them are garbage.
Yeah.
And I know Doug Bradley, I can't remember if it was 3, 4. They stopped having him and then brought him back later.
Yeah.
He missed a few films in the middle. And I don't know if that was a contract dispute or if it was over money or if somebody like with not Jason, but with Jason in Friday the 13th. I don't know. There were like 7 Jasons or something. Yeah. So, and I don't know why they just kept choosing different people. Cause I think, Kane Hodder is the most famous. I think he only did 1, maybe 2.
He did a few, but yeah, a lot of them weren't him.
Yeah. So anyway, it's total aside. Yes, watch it. go rent it or stream it. You can't rent it.
They should have had Patrick Stewart. I feel it would be a good Pinhead.
Make it so.
All right. Spoilers?
Spoilers. Spoilers.
So I just had an upcoming thing spoiled for me.
Okay, what would you like to start with?
Well, I'd asked you before about the practical effects.
Yes, okay,
And you were
practicals.
downstairs, so let's start with that.
Okay, the only practical that I don't think holds up and I didn't think was very good at the time either is that ridiculous worm thing.
Yeah, okay. I was thinking about most of like the kill scenes and stuff and thinking those were really good, but you're right. They had a name for it.
Yeah, I can't remember.
It was like a weird name.
But it comes up twice because it comes up when Kirsty's in the hospital and she goes down that corridor. This is when she has the lament configuration and she's starting to play with it and things start happening.
Is it better or worse than the Ewok werewolf from The Howling?
Better.
Okay, I don't know. It's pretty close. But yeah, I agree. It did not look good. But the practicals otherwise are really good. The only thing like when the hooks go in and rip out the skin.
That's very rubbery looking.
Some of the skin looks not super convincing at this point. But the when the blood first falls through the floorboards and the Frank starts to resurrect.
That's a very cool scene.
Looks really good.
Yeah.
And I guess they used reverse photography and melting wax to do that.
Oh.
Which works really well and holds up really well, I think.
That's very cool. I didn't realize that's how they did that scene.
And do you want to talk about the thing that you noticed?
Yes, I was just going to say. So,
which I did notice as well, but it didn't catch my eye the same way.
So I've seen this film many times. And it's one of the early scenes and it comes back later in the film. And I don't know really how to describe it, but it's kind of like this thing that's rotating around and it's got chains on it and hooks.
Is it like barbed wire almost with like human bits hanging off of it?
There's like human bits everywhere. And I never noticed until this time around that there was a human genital bit on this thing. It's lower down and I don't know why I was looking at that. I was just kind of seeing what was on this revolving thing. And it was like, is that what I think it is? And I kind of rewound and looked at it again. And
do you think it's possible that was not in the original version and maybe the version that we watched has that back in? Maybe that was one of the things taken out to remove the X rating?
Possibly. And
I mean, pretty subtle.
Clive Barker is gay.
Yeah.
So, I wondered if there's little Easter eggs in there, for people who are in the know sort of thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they would have cut something so brief and so like it's really in the shadows. And for the amount of times I've seen the film, for this to be the first time I've noticed it, I mean, I'm sure people are more observant than I am. They've noticed it sooner or whatever, but it just really jumped out at me and it never has.
Yeah, I noticed it, but you told me to look out for it. So I think that primed me to notice it.
I mean, so yeah, I think the kills and he doesn't go overboard, but it's just cringy that Julia kills these guys with a hammer.
Yeah.
So the concept of the film, because we didn't really talk about this, Julia wants to bring back Frank from the dead. That she thinks
she was having an affair with him when she was with Larry, right?
Yes, and it's and they certainly suggest that it was really hot sex and that Frank is a much better lover than Larry. So when they come, they're in. They're not in England anymore. They've come back to the States for this house. This is the house that he grew up in.
That's right.
Larry.
Because even it sounds like this was a British production made for an American audience. Yeah. And apparently even like dubbed over some of the audio to get rid of the British accents to make it sound more American.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
But yeah, that being said, it would make sense that they want to have, is it New Jersey?
I don't know. I can't remember. But anyway, it doesn't matter. He comes back.
I got that like East Coast or something.
Yeah, he comes back to his family home, and there's a sense. Larry says, Frank's been here, but you don't get a sense of when he was here. Just that his stuff is everywhere. There's a bunch of rotting food in the kitchen, so somebody's been there at some point. But there's a scene where Larry has left the attic. They're in the attic, and that's where Frank was kind of camping out. And she starts looking through the photos and she's having nostalgia about being with him and whatever. And then I can't remember, how does she, is that where he starts to come through? Like, how does she know that he's kind of there.
I don't think she does know until, because remember, Larry cuts his hand on
and the blood
nail,
goes on the floor.
and then that's when I think he says like, "Hi, I'm Frank," or like,
Yeah.
But I didn't get the sense that she did know. I think she yearned for him.
Yes, okay.
Generally, but like it wasn't apparent that he was in the house until the blood goes to the floorboards and resurrects, or it starts to resurrect him.
And again, just so we kind of cover the story. So the idea is that Frank had this lament configuration. He figured it out. The Cenobites came, hooked him, took him away.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be for eternity that he's on this cusp of pleasure pain.
Yeah.
Somehow, and I'm glad they didn't worry about how.
Yes.
Frank escapes the Cenobites, and Kirsty comes across the box.
Yeah.
And she starts playing with it. And the Cenobites turn up for Kirsty, and she says, "Wait, like instead of taking me, how about you take Frank?" And they all like know Frank.
She's like, "Frank managed to slip through your fingers."
And they're like, "No, that never happens." And so she's trying to convince the Cenobites that if she gives them Frank, they shouldn't take her.
Yeah.
So that's how the movie, that's how the plot proceeds, right? I just really liked how they were very conscious about what they showed, what they told you, what they suggested, rather than having to show you everything.
Yeah, and there's no like peripheral character with the expedition dump of, the Cenobites are this, that, and they work this way, and if you do this, you get that. Like it, again, respects the audience, and it's it trickles out. The lore trickles out throughout the film, and you kind of have to put two and two together. And I don't know, because I think I have not also seen many of the Hellraiser films. I'm assuming they probably beat you over the head with the lore maybe later in the franchise. Maybe. But I like the restraint and like just the mystery of you having to like not know everything, but you can kind of put the pieces together. Yeah. Yeah.
I mentioned early on, like I love Pinhead. And I think he has the three best lines in the movie, which is, actually he just got two of them and there's another one. So he says, "We have such sights to show you." Yeah. And then of course he's talking to Kirsty and he says, "We'll tear your soul apart."
Are you going to edit in him saying that?
"We'll tear your soul apart."
Anyway, so I like those two lines. And then I think is it Frank? It must be Frank because he's being torn apart when his face and he goes, "Jesus wept." And that was, I don't know, that just how it's happening and how he says it, I think is just a really great.
Yeah, it feels super dark.
Yeah.
And the idea that these are supposed to be agents of hell, I think they get that point across pretty convincingly.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I like that there is some, you don't know exactly what the rules are, but they're not just pure agents of chaos. Like they are adhering to a certain code or certain laws to do what they do.
Did you notice, because I'm just asking, because you were born in 83, did you notice some of the 80s trends that show up in this?
No, maybe once you mention them, but nothing stood out to me.
So if you think of Julia's wardrobe, the big shoulders, like the shoulder pads, and then
that's very classic.
Her her makeup, that's very 80s.
Yeah,
Kirsty's very plain. I mean, she's a beautiful woman, but she doesn't have a lot of makeup on. Yeah, and she's pretty much in the attire of eternity, which is jeans and a t-shirt.
Yes.
And so that doesn't show it, but 100% Julia
looks super 80s.
Yes.
And her haircut.
Yes. And her haircut, everything. So she definitely dates the film. But if you had Julia dressed, there's nothing against the acting. But if you put a different wardrobe on Julia, you could set this anywhere and it would be a similar kind of feel.
Yeah, like again, they didn't use the synth 80s.
Exactly.
That's right. This doesn't feel necessarily super 80s like some of the other films we've watched this season.
I mean, I wouldn't, other than those couple of things with Julia, you could show this to me and I wouldn't know that it was necessarily 80s.
Yeah. And I saw an interview with her and she was actually saying how fun the set was like to make. So it's kind of cool that a movie that's like so dark.
Yes.
And you hear sometimes that some of these film sets were not very pleasant places to be. Yeah. But apparently the Hellraiser set was a good time.
And I've heard that often the darker the film, the lighter the set is.
Except for The Exorcist.
Yeah, okay. Except for The Exorcist. So not every horror film, but a lot of horror films that are, dark and they're so gruesome on film that you think, wow, that must have been a heavy slog to make this film. But then you hear an interview and they go, no, it was so much fun on set and we were laughing. But I really believe that that's true because you have to release all of that darkness and all of the stuff that you're doing in your scene work. And I think humor is the only and best way to do that, right?
Yeah. Ellen Burstyn might disagree with you a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. So anything else that you would like to say about this film? I mean, there's lots we could talk about.
Yeah, there is.
Which was your favorite Cenobite, by the way? Was it Pinhead?
No, I kind of think the guy with the mouth is really disturbing. But actually the woman one I thought has a really
the one with the
cool
thing
aesthetic.
on her head.
Yeah. And like the metal coming out of her. They all look really good. Like, it's just another real strength. Like the makeup and the effort they put into them and just the design of them is very unique. Like Jason just is wearing a mask and Michael Myers looks like William Shatner, but the Cenobites do look really cool. I'm trying to remember, do they expand later in the franchise? Do they bring in all sorts of different Cenobites that look crazy, or is it always these same ones?
I don't know. I have a sense because I haven't seen them either.
There's 4, right?
Yeah.
And there's that bigger one who's just a bit whatever.
Yeah. He's not scary. I mean, he's ugly.
Ugly.
But, yeah. But the other ones are like, and that chattering teeth one is super creepy. I mean, Pinhead, of course, is pretty creepy too. Did you get a sense? Do any of the other ones talk? But they do. So there's a couple of scenes where the woman one talks to Kirsty.
And then the one from 2 years ago, the Hulu one, it's like a Pinhead, but it's a woman.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting take on the Pinhead thing. So
which one is that? So I've got a list of the films here. So is that Judgment or Revelations? Because the order would be, 1, 2, Hell on Earth is 3.
I think it's
Bloodline.
Hellraiser 2022. I think it might just be called Hellraiser.
Oh, okay. So it's a remake, a reboot.
Yeah, or maybe it's Judgment. It's I think that one you should watch.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, I get that like Hellraiser 7 is probably not going to be very good to watch, but that more recent one was good.
Okay. Yeah, that's good to know.
And the idea that like, I guess Frank is sort of a metaphor for addiction.
Yeah, I would think so.
Wanting to keep going back to the addiction to pleasure and then the not so good outcome of what can happen if you go down that path too far.
I mean, I would imagine if this film was made more recently, it would have been sex addiction. That it probably would have had something to do with pornography. Yeah. Because Frank is definitely chasing that addiction. Yeah. Because all the Polaroids that Julia are going through, many of them are him in different sexual positions with different women. And so, yeah, I think that's exactly what they're suggesting is that idea of addiction. In this case, I think a sex addiction or a pleasure addiction.
Yeah, and I like they took the time to explore, like they invested time in having her like go on these dates and meet these guys and how she kind of like entraps them and like the different attitudes of the men for wanting to go and hook up with her. And then obviously when she takes them out with a hammer, which makes sense like as a smaller person.
And those are gruesome. Like just the idea of a hammer hitting your head is gruesome. And you know what I did? You reminded me of so when she goes out and meets these guys, what I think is really true, it feels true. It feels authentic. You meet someone in a bar or whatever, she suggests that, that you come home. But once they get to her house, it's like there's they know something's up. Yeah. Like what's happening? Maybe it's something that she does. But it's just that feeling. And I haven't had that in a date situation, but I've had it in other situations where you go to someone's house and it's just like, there's something off here. And I don't know what it is.
Yeah, doesn't one guy say, oh, there's no bed? And she's like, oh, we can just do it in here, standing up or whatever. And he's like, oh, yeah, okay. I enjoyed that part of the film. It just made it pretty intriguing.
Yeah, absolutely. I just... it's been quite a while since I watched this, so I'm glad this was on the list because
You're welcome.
I probably would have waited longer to rewatch it. But it was really, first of all, I think it's important to be in an 80s season because I think it's a pretty iconic 80s film.
Yeah. And it's easy to go all in on Stephen King, but Clive Barker is fun to explore.
Absolutely. And did you say you hadn't seen the other two, Midnight Meat Train and Nightbreed?
No, I've not.
Nightbreed is interesting. It's not as well done as this, but it's got similar themes in the sense of like it's about these creatures from hell, but it's about kind of how they interact with the rest of the world. So they're living on Earth; they're not living in hell, but they have to interact with the real world, and so that's a little bit what the film's about. Midnight Meat Train is brutal.
Is this the best of them, do you think?
Yeah,
Okay.
of those ones. But I will say, as I mentioned before, Bradley Cooper is the lead. I can't remember the actress's name, but people will recognize her right away as his girlfriend. So he plays a photographer who's, he's I think trying to get ready for an exhibition, and he's going around town doing street photography and whatever, and he ends up in the subway. And he starts seeing things that are disturbing to him. And this is where Vince the Gargantuan comes in. You'll know this better than me. Because it's bugging me. Who's the character in Marvel, like the X-Men, with the big concrete thing on his head?
Juggernaut?
Juggernaut.
Yeah.
He plays Juggernaut.
Oh, okay.
In the original. That's
okay.
he's in like Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
Oh, I totally know the guy
yeah.
that you're talking. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So
I don't know his name, but I totally can picture the guy.
Yeah.
Lock,
I know
Stock
his first name's Vince. I don't know why I remember that, but I can't remember his last name. So he's in it, and you think you know what he is, but he's not what he seems to be.
Okay, neat.
And so I would recommend, although it's a slow start, there's some twists and turns, and I think the payoff at the end is worth it.
I was
thought
always
it
intrigued just
decent.
based on the title, like Midnight
Totally.
Meat Train.
That's totally why I watched it. It was like, okay, this is going to be gruesome.
What was the original name for this one supposed to be?
Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave.
So maybe there's something to be said for those like crazy titles.
Yeah. I didn't look. I'm sure Midnight Meat Train was probably a novella or a short story that he had written.
Yeah, I had a very circuitous route introduction to Clive Barker because there's a video game called Clive Barker's Jericho. And I think that was the first time that I had heard the name Clive Barker, and it was it's a very like kind of dark, bloody, like first person shooter kind of horror game. Do you know Jericho? Is that a book as well? Or I don't know if he made the game or if the game was based on one of his books.
Yeah, that's ringing a bell as a title of one of his novels, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah. So anyways, he does have a video game adaptation called Jericho. So that was the first time I'd heard Clive Barker. But you and I talked about the Books of Blood and stuff a lot at work. And then, obviously Hellraiser. His most iconic?
I would think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, like, even though there's lots of this movie, I feel like we've kind of talked about everything that I want to touch on.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to dissect it sort of piece by piece. I think, so first of all, go watch it if you haven't watched it. And if you have watched it, maybe rewatch it with some of the things we've talked about. See if you can find that part at the beginning that I mentioned earlier. And also just, see whether you agree with us or not. Do the practicals hold up? Is this something that you would recommend? Like, would you recommend this to a modern viewer?
I would. And that's why I really appreciate it, because I think the story, because it's focused on characters and like her desire and her luring these men back and murdering. Like, I think that is universally interesting, and that's not a product of the 80s. And I think because they use practical effects and the makeup is so good, and the music is not synth 80s. Like, I think to your point, it doesn't feel like it was made in the 80s, and therefore it is more accessible for a modern audience. So far, I feel like it hasn't been a great track record for 1980s movies holding up for a modern horror viewer in 2025. But I think this is one that would totally hold up.
I agree.
So I would definitely recommend, of almost all the movies we've done this season, that this would be one of the better ones to check out.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
And I'm sort of tempted to go watch some of the other ones just to see when it falls off a cliff. But maybe, like, are they all bad? Is Hellraiser 3 maybe that's got some redeeming qualities?
I don't know. Because like I said, I've only watched 1 and 2. But I've heard from other, like listening to podcasts and stuff that, yeah, it does kind of fall off a cliff in the middle. But you might be right. Like I might bookend it and watch the last one and kind of work my way backwards and see when it falls off the cliff.
And there's this sort of like paradox or irony of like, okay, they give you a bit of the lore in this one and it kind of makes you want to know more.
True.
But then there's like a fine line and a threshold between like, once you explain it too much, then it loses its mystery and it's kind of hokey or whatever. So it's like, oh, I kind of want to know more about the Cenobites and the lore behind it. But once it gets too crazy, then maybe it loses its luster. So maybe it's better to have you just wanting more rather than feel like you.
I kind of feel that way. Like I feel like it gives you just enough to be intriguing.
Yes.
And to say, okay, well, this is possible. Like, you know, possible in the world of horror movies. But they don't beat you over the head with it, or they don't give the Cenobites a backstory. It doesn't matter where they're from hell. They look crazy. They're there to inflict pleasure or pain or both. And that's all you need to know. Right. And that they follow a set of rules, which they imply or come outright and say, like, nobody's ever escaped from us. Like once you enter, you're done.
Yeah. And this is really refreshing. Like you've got Jason, you've got Freddy, you got Michael Myers, you got Pennywise, but they are all just like murderers.
Yes.
But this one, there's just a lot more to it and it's more psychological. And I think that makes it really refreshing and appealing.
I mean, arguably, I think you could make a convincing argument. The Cenobites are not bad or evil or anything else. They just do what they do.
Yeah.
And you've brought that on yourself.
Yeah.
Like Frank sought out the the lament configuration. He figured it out and he knew what was going to come, or at least he had a sense of where that was leading.
Yeah. And if it is sort of a metaphor for addiction, like they are like the consequences.
Yes. Yeah.
They represent the negative consequences of going too far down those pathways into seeking things beyond the amount that one should, I think. It kind of reminds me of Saw a little bit too, where in Saw, the stuff, like arguably most of the people who are the victims in Saw are bad people or who are being punished in some way for not appreciating things. Or in some cases, they're like criminals or they've betrayed someone or backstabbed someone. So this reminds me a little bit of that, where the victims of the Cenobites tend to be people who are crossing some moral threshold. Or
the thing that I agree with you, but I think the distinction for me is that Hellraiser has no morality and no judgment.
Right.
In the sense of the Cenobites aren't there to judge him. The Cenobites just do what they do. Mm-hmm. And the difference is in Saw,
Jigsaw's,
he's making judgments based on a moral stand that people don't live up to. And so he's going to teach them a lesson. So I really like, and I think this is,
now we're basing that on the first film.
Sure.
So it's possible as the franchise goes on, like when the Saw franchise goes on, they kind of flesh that out. So maybe they develop into that, but you're right. Yeah. Based on the first one.
Yeah. So just the first one. And I think that's because Clive Barker has an alternate lifestyle. I think that's part of the reason why that comes through in the film. He's not judging anybody in the film.
Yeah. Because in the 2022 one, it's a female character and she's like a drug addict.
Okay.
So again, it's sort of a metaphor for like pursuing addiction.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, even if I don't go back and watch all of them, maybe I'll watch like recaps of all of them or something just to get a sense, because it's kind of interesting. Yeah,
it is. And I mean, I am curious to see where they take the franchise, because, you know, for example, Friday the 13th, it's the same thing over and over. And yes, they change up the kills and they make things more interesting or whatever. But it's the same premise over and over and over again. I don't know, and I wonder, therefore, in this franchise, do they just do that? Is it just somebody who's seeking something and then the Cenobites come? Or do they kind of throw in a new thing each film about the Cenobites, or about how you summon them, how you get them?
Yeah. I seem to recall the ones I saw, like I've seen, maybe they're all in the background or I watched them in high school, or I think it takes a lot more, like it takes place in their realm.
Yes.
Like it feels more ethereal and more like in hell rather than in the real world. Whereas this one, most of the film takes place in the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's almost because when we see when the Cenobites enter, there's all this like funky lighting and stuff. So it seems almost like it's a different dimension.
Totally.
Whether that's between worlds or whatever. But and I think that's where that dumb looking worm thing comes in.
Yeah, it looked pretty bad.
It's kind of chasing Kirsty down this corridor at one point, and it's just. I think its movement is what makes it so cheesy because it kind of bounces along.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem, I don't see any feet anywhere that are hitting ground. So how is this thing moving? But also it's that bounciness is like, that's not how living creatures move.
Yeah. And it looks goofy rather than scary.
Exactly.
Like everything else in the film is pretty dark, pretty convincing.
Yeah.
It makes you kind of recoil in horror. And that thing was just like, oh, it kind of looks bad.
And so talking about that scene, do you think, because this is what I think, they could have cut that whole worm corridor thing
Yes.
and just had Kirsty messing about with the lament configuration and then have the Cenobite show
100%. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. I think it was maybe an odd choice to go with the worm.
Yeah.
Maybe it looked better in the 80s and just doesn't hold up today, but.
Or maybe it's just there are movies, like I know there's a big complaint about Stephen King's It and the spider thing or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
but when you've got Pinhead, you've got the Cenobites, like you've got your creatures that look totally scary.
Yeah.
You don't need this ridiculous looking worm thing.
The worm comes back at the end.
Yeah.
And again, so coming back to my directorial debut and recutting this film, if you got rid of the worm in the corridor, would you therefore have to get rid of the worm at the end? And how would that make sense then at the end? Would you just have Kirsty leave the Cenobites and like get out? Or
you mean like the like street guy who grabs the thing and turns into like a dragon?
No, I mean the worm thing comes back at the end, and while the house is crumbling, remember she's trying to fight it off, and so
you just get rid of it.
Yeah, I think you could just get rid of it altogether. You could we would be able to make the connection between the Cenobites and the house disintegrating or whatever. So I don't think you need the worm there to somehow indicate to us that she's being drawn into another realm or another world.
Agreed.
You could have had the Cenobites have a little bit more to do and then just have the house.
What did you think of the ending when they grab the puzzle box and
I thought that was kind of cool, actually. I liked, because I couldn't figure out the first time I watched it, like, why is that character? And at first I thought maybe he's a Cenobite who's on Earth. It just seems like maybe he's a watchdog or some kind of sentry of their realm and the box.
Because there's that scene earlier when he's like eating the crickets or whatever, which was kind of unsettling. Like that part was cool. Again, maybe the CG there, the practicals on that one didn't hold up quite the same way. The dragon thing.
The dragon thing. Yeah. I mean, it was a little bit clunky, I thought, but I thought.
Do you like that it comes full circle back to, it's the same guy who's, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. I thought they did a really good job of wrapping that up at the end, because I don't think you could have ended it where Kirsty escapes.
Yeah.
I think you had to have some kind of wrap up.
Are there written sequels as well? Like there's the films, Hellraiser 2, 3, 4. Is there written versions of those as well, do you think?
I don't know.
Like the Clive Barker, right?
I don't think so.
No.
And I don't know. I mean, I'd have to look to see if he was writer on any of the other ones.
Yeah, I wonder if that's something that he did or if he lost control of the franchise and he's pissed off that they made all these Hellraiser films.
Yeah, because I mean, it's likely that he doesn't own the rights. He owns the rights to his book. Yeah. But I would guess it's probably likely that the studio, is it New Line or whoever, they probably own the rights to the franchise. So they can, anytime they want, just say, no, you're not directing, you're not writing. We're just taking this property and moving forward, right? So
for the last 10 years at Halloween, I've dressed up as a different horror movie character.
Pinhead?
And I'm tempted to try the Pinhead thing. I've seen the Pinhead masks, and some of them are not good. Yeah. I feel like you'd have to like go all in and actually do it properly. Would you do that?
Or spend a ton of money on a good
or a
one.
really good mask. But he would be That would be an amazing Halloween costume. I don't know if I've ever seen a good Pinhead. I went to Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, and I think there was a good Pinhead there.
Cool.
Would you do that, Pinhead?
If I could pull it off as
I
a
guess when you have
costume.
hair too, it's a problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a lot of problems. I'm short. Like he's tall and lean.
Right.
I'm not. And yeah, it'd be a tough costume to pull off. Because you've also got the look of, I know when some of the other Cenobites have like skin missing and you can see their innards. So yes, you can have costumes for all of that stuff, but like the long leather robe and like all of that stuff is.
I'm sure at horror conventions and stuff, there's been some really amazing cosplay for Pinhead, but he's a character that I'm tempted to like, oh, that would be really cool to pull
That would
off.
be pretty cool. Yeah. I think I'll just dress up as Frank.
Yeah, I was, who's the clown?
Pennywise?
No, from Terrifier.
Oh, Art the Clown.
Art the Clown. Yeah. I was Art the Clown this year. That was really funny.
It was pretty scary, actually.
It was. And the best story is I was the Santa version from Terrifier 3, and I was out on the street, and this one little girl, she was like 2, came up to me, and she's like, Santa. And her mom came out to me like, oh, like she wants to ask you what she wants for Christmas.
Yeah.
And I was terrifying. Like, I had grown adults, men and women, like running in the other direction, and yet this little like Santa, I want this for Christmas. Like she wanted like a Paw Patrol doll, and she was not fazed at all by the fact that I had like blood. And
so interesting that I imagine in her eyes, she's just seeing the
Santa outfit.
Yeah, Santa outfit, and she's not registering the rest of it.
Yeah, right? I had like an actual axe. Like I'm surprised her mom let her come anywhere near me.
That is surprising.
But that was the best story from this Halloween. Is like everyone was like crossing the street and going nowhere near me. But yeah, this little like 2 or 3 year old girl was like, Santa, I want a Paw Patrol doll for Christmas. So
yeah, sometimes you still go out because you have little kids. Yeah. And I don't anymore. So
you can come with us if you want.
I could. I do miss sometimes those seeing the costumes and stuff.
And you and I have done Freddie and Jason at school before, which was kind of fun. Yeah. Anyways.
There you go. So how many days until Halloween? Are you counting? We're more than halfway there.
More than halfway, yeah. So
there you go.
I don't have exact day count.
Anyway, anything else to add?
No, I think that's it. Just if you've not seen Hellraiser, you should go check it out.
Yeah, 100%.
And the 2022 one was pretty good.
All right.
Just check that out.
So you've got 11 movies. I'd start with the first one, though. Don't just jump in halfway through the franchise.
Yeah, you're going to go backwards. So we have 2 regular episodes left, and then we're going to do our top 10 80s, and that'll wrap season 7.
Do we have 2 or 1? I guess 2. There's 2.
Your pick and my pick.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know what my pick is. Oh, yeah, I know. I know. Yeah. Sorry. Yes, we have 2 episodes left.
Well, we'll leave you in suspense as to what those picks are.
That's right. We're not telling you. You just got to come back, have another listen. Okay.
Thanks for listening, and we'll
see you in the aisles.